Hey coaches, this is Coach Randy with Radius Athletics. Let's talk basketball. Today we're going to be talking about some flare screen essentials. We'll be discussing how to use flare screens, when to use them, and different types of setups involving flare screens, different flare screen reads, and what the screener should do after executing a flare screen to maintain spacing in the possession. First of all, when to use flare screens would be when your cutter, the desired shooter in most instances, is above the screener in relation to the baseline. The cutter is higher up the floor, the screener is lower in the floor in relation to the baseline. There are two types of flare screens, and we categorize them based on the direction the ball is moving. The first type of flare screen would be a flare screen executed when the ball is going away. In diagram A, in frame 1, the player 2 passed the ball across the slots to player 1. The ball is going away from the cutter, and the screener moves into position to set the flare screen as the ball is going away. The second category of flare screens would be with the ball coming towards. This could be via the pass or the dribble. In this diagram, it's via the pass. Player 3 passes to player 1, and as the ball is moving towards the desired cutter, the screener is moving in position to set the flare screen. We'll use these diagrams here to demonstrate a few more flare screen essentials. For example, it's critical that the screener move in position to set the screen on airtime of the pass. For example, when 2 passes the ball across the slots here to 1, while that ball is in the air, as soon as 2 releases it and the ball is in the air, 4 should be on the go, setting the flare screen. Likewise, with the ball coming towards, as 3 passes the ball to 1 on airtime of this pass, 4 should be moving into position. What we want is a situation where as soon as 1 catches the ball, he turns and looks, and the action's already being set as the ball arrives. At times a player will dribble fill. For example, let's say this player had the ball on the wing. We have a cutter on the high elbow and a screener here on the wing. Perhaps player 1 passed here in basket cut and is clearing out, leaving a vacancy on the top. All right. So 3 would execute what's called a dribble fill. They dribble to fill the top. Your screener in this case would want to practice the art of timing the screen with the arrival of the ball. If they went too soon while the ball was still over here on the wing, they might set a great screen and good things might happen, but it's not timed with the ball, therefore the pass is not in a position to be delivered to the cutter. This area above the top of the key, kind of in the middle of the floor right here, we call that the hot zone. It is from there that passes to action are more effective. So what 4 would do is, as the ball is being dribbled toward the hot zone, they would time that screen to put it in concert, if you will, with the arrival of the ball into the hot zone. Another way to look at the timing of flare screens is to look at the court divided into thirds. Ideally, you flare screen when the ball is in the middle third of the court, for the cutter often goes to the outer third of the court. You want to set the flare screen with the ball in the middle of the middle third of the court rather than the opposite outer third of the court. Therefore, it's incorrect to flare screen on 1/3 of the court while the ball is still on the outside third of the court. A few more flare screening fundamentals. We want the screener to jump stop into the screen, land with a wide base. Their butt should be pointed toward the corner of the court. And that's really the screening posture we're looking for from the screener. Again, time the ball with the action, whether you time the action with the ball coming toward you on a dribble fill, or whether you time the flare screen immediately on airtime of the pass from slot to slot, or immediately on the airtime of the pass coming from the opposite wing to the slot on top. The screener should move on airtime. Some tips for the cutter when receiving a flare screen. There'll be times when the ball, as you're going away, there'll be times when the defender jumps to the direction of the ball and is in the passing lane in a deny stance. In that case, what I want the cutter to do is just go. There's no setup needed. 4 would come screen. 2, if you pass slot to slot, you see a man in the passing lane on the pass, just go right off the flare screen. No setup needed. In other instances, perhaps you're playing a pack line team, a team whose rules say only the player guarding the basketball is outside of the three-point arc. Their goal is to pack it in, make penetration difficult, and so they pressure the basketball to contain the dribble, but as soon as the ball is passed away from them, they move back into a help position, into a gap, or inside the pack to help on dribble penetration. So when that happens, the screener's still moving on airtime. The pass is made slot to slot. You see that your defender drop after you pass the ball. Now what you need to do is set them up. What I call chest them toward the nail. Take them a little bit lower toward the nail and then cut off the flare screen. In so doing, you kind of create a situation where they either have to trail you or go under the screen or be taken out by the screen. You don't leave a gap. So by setting the cut up against a sinking defender and then using the cut in this manner, you make the screen more effective with a good setup. Let's talk about flare screen reads. The reads of flare screens are very similar as the reads off of down screens, which we've discussed in prior videos. For example, as 4 moves into position to screen, 1 is bringing the ball to the action, bringing the ball into the hot zone. 2 is coming off the flare screen, and X2, their defender, decides to go under the screen. Well, the cutter would then outcut. The screener would want to change their angle and pin the cutter's defender in the lane. 2 would then outcut. The goal here is to get between the shoulder blades of the screener and make the defense's line of recovery have to go through the screen in order to get back to the ball. Again, 4 must change the angle of the screen here. At first, their butt's toward the corner. All right? The defender goes under. They change the angle and pin the cutter's defender in the lane. So now their butt would be, or their back essentially is telling the cutter where they want them to go. Settle right between their shoulder blades for the shot. At times, the cutter's defender will elect to trail the cutter around the screen. Try to fight over the top of the screen. In that case, it's a curl cut for the cutter. Just curl the screen all the way to the rim. 1 will find you for a layup. And in frame 4, what we see is the screener moving as the ball enters the hot zone via the dribble, and the screener actually takes out the cutter's defender. Maybe X2 lost vision, he's watching the ball, he's ready to help, and he doesn't have vision of the screener coming to get him. So we really get a good wide base, we tie up his outside foot, and an effective screen is set. In that case, the cutter makes a straight cut. One would deliver the pass over the top for the shot. Now, let's talk about some things the screener should do after setting the flare screen. The first cut, as you see here, in this example, is a straight cut. What are the screener's options after setting the screen? Well, one option is a slip. Perhaps X4 in this case sees that their teammate has been taken out by the screen. They're moving with 4 as they come in position to screen, and they decide they're going to help over the top for just a step or two on the cutter. In that case, you're open for the slip. Just dive to the basket. If they elect to take away the cutter with the helping defender, then that means you are available to slip to the basket. And again, we've got an outside cut coupled with an inside cut. If one were to stay in this slot area on the left side, a simple cut like this to just fill the top sometimes works. The ball's being brought, it stops right here in this area, leaving this slot open after 2 makes his cut off the flare screen. 4 can simply screen, hold the screen, and as 2 fights off of it, either under or over, just show your hands to the ball, make the catch, and square the top. Oftentimes this happens. The ball will be over here on the wing, and perhaps 4 got a little anxious or isn't quite experienced enough player to understand to time the screen with the ball, and they set a screen, they set the flare screen, and 2 comes off of it, and the ball is still over here on the weak side wing. That's far too long of a pass to make to this cutter. The ball hasn't been brought to the action. It hasn't entered that hot zone. So 4 has already set the screen. And 4 then makes their second cut to the top. And now, along about this time, 1 is actually bringing it to the action. So the second cut I would want 4 to make would be a rescreen, where now, they come to the realization that the flare screen wasn't timed with the arrival of the ball. The ball now enters the hot zone, and the flare screen can be followed or coupled with a down screen, creating a screen-rescreen action, where 2 who just came off the flare screen would then set up their man for the cut, and maybe we could get a down screen that is now timed with the ball and turn it into a nice inside cut, let's say a curl cut for a layup here. So the second cuts by the screener are to slip, to space the near elbow if the ball stays opposite, or I'm sorry, the near high elbow if the ball stays opposite, or to rescreen to better time some screening action with the ball. Additionally, this can happen. Perhaps 1 has the ball here, 4 comes to set the flare screen, on 2, and we get a really nice cut, let's say by 2. They come off the screen, and we get a nice screen where we take out X2, 2's defender. 1 continues to bring it with the dribble to shorten that pass from 1 to 2, and they hit them. All right, now this high elbow is filled because 1 kept bringing the ball to the cutter. All right, and then what I would like to do is for the screener, if they don't slip, if they don't have a slip opportunity, to space away. Perhaps this high, they can space to this high elbow. So 1 is bringing it with the dribble. They have the option to pass it to 2. Perhaps X4 had to help. Now 1 has a turn back option to 4 spacing to this elbow. Or, additionally, perhaps player number 3 that was over here on the wing knows that one of their principles in offense is to square the top. 1 brought it all the way over here, so that part of the top is squared. 2 is now the wing player. Maybe 3 blast cuts and fills the top spot. And now 4 can space all the way away, creating a super long closeout. If X4 had to hedge a bit on 2, 1 doesn't throw it, they've got to turn back to 3 and a quick reversal, and maybe we can turn it to your stretch 4 player before 4 can get off that screening action to close them out. But what we want to maintain is a square top and floor balance. 2 players to the right of the midline, 2 players to the left of the midline. So those are some tips on flare screens. Email me, randy@radiusathletics.com, if you have any other questions about motion offense, particularly flare screens, down screens, anything having to do with motion offense, or visit www.radiusathletics.com for more information about how you can learn these concepts and take them to your basketball teams. Thank you.